Shalom, everyone. We're here from Tustin, from Southern California, and we're on a special Middle East update from here. Today is one of the most important dates on the Hebrew calendar. Today. It's the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, which is the one last before the end of the civil calendar, but it is not, of course, the one last on the biblical one. However, the reason why Jewish people are fasting, lamenting, and grieving today is because the 9th day of the month of Av is related to several tragic events in the history of the Jewish people. I will tell you that they relate this date to the 14th century BC. The spies returning from the promised land with the frightening report. They say that it was on that day. Then, of course, the two temples, both the first temple in 587 BC and the second temple in 70 AD, both of them in a very interesting way were destroyed, one by the Babylonian, the other one by the Romans, on the same day of the Hebrew calendar. Then the Jewish revolt against the Romans, the second revolt, led by the false Messiah, Bar Kokhba. They say that one of the crucial fights, the siege over the city of Beitar, which was a fortress at the time, actually was broken. That siege was actually successful, and the city of Beitar's resistance was broken on the 9th day of Av. And that was in 135 AD. And if that's not enough, both the 1290 expulsion of England Jews and the 1492 banishment of all Jews from Spain, both were decided on the 9th day of the month of Av. So for the Jewish people, it is a day of lamenting over tragic past, but also, and that brings me now to what we're going to talk about in the next few seconds, it brings hopes of the Jewish people for the third temple. They lament over the destruction of the first and over the destruction of the second, yet the Temple Institute in Jerusalem is already having blueprints for the third temple. And in fact, the prayer that the Jewish people wanted to have on the Temple Mount today, which is, by the way, right now, as you all know, is held by Muslims with the third holiest site for them, the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. Jewish people wanted to go and pray there, and there were riots by the Palestinians there, and the Israeli police decided it's not worth it. We don't need casualties. We don't need anything. So they blocked the entrance of the Jewish people for the rest of the day, which angered the Jews and, of course, caused the Arabs to say, we are the owners and landlords here and all of that. But remember one thing, which brings me now, Pastor, to the Trump deal of the century. And a lot of people are interested in knowing, is this the peace deal that the Bible declares in the book of Daniel as the 7 years deal that the Antichrist will cut, will sign, and then break? Well, I always say it's not, because the deal of the century has nothing to do with necessarily 7 years and all of that. However, the entire prospect of the deal of the century is it's like a domino effect right now in the entire Middle East. And let me explain what I'm talking about. In light of the Iranian rising threat and what's going on right there, all the moderate Sunni Arab countries understand that Israel is actually the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if Israel is the only country in the world that dares to strike Iran's aggressions daily almost, then the Arabs trust more the Israeli response to Iran's aggression than any other country. And therefore they understand, look, we've been fighting Israel for more than 70 years over an issue that is a non-issue, the Palestinian thing. We get nothing from it. And Israel thrives. The Palestinians keep themselves encourage themselves in a status to stay in the status of refugees. And they realize that this whole thing is a scam. The Trump administration pulled its support from the United Nations Relief and Work Association, which was a big scam of the United Nations, to keep the Palestinians as refugees and not to help them getting out of that. And so now UNRWA is bankrupt, and then now they find out that all the money that used to come in used to go into private pockets anyway. So what I'm trying to say is that everybody's jumping off ship right now. The Arab states want peace with Israel for the sake of protection from Iran. The Europeans realize all their money went to the wrong pockets. The Americans say we're not going to allow that, because that's the problem why there is no peace over there. We will actually help the Palestinians financially, economically, and once they get out of that circle of poverty, they'll see that there is hope and they won't send their children to just blow themselves up. And so Jerusalem becomes a non-issue. The temple becomes a non-issue. The refugees becomes a non-issue. Everybody is, look, Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem and the world still goes on. And my point is, I see the deal of the century as a way to bring about the possibility of the prospect of having eventually a third temple in Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish people. And that is why the Palestinians are so angry right now, because they realized that the carpet they were standing on was pulled off just from underneath, and they are no longer feeling the support, the care, and the I guess, international community's soft hand. How do you see, by the way, the whole deal of the century affecting the Middle East?
Well, it's going to have an impact and already has. Just to talk about it, the little bit that's been released about it, the economic summit in Bahrain caused quite a stir, polarized the world further. You know, we had the foreign minister from Bahrain come out and state that we want to be friendly with Israel, we want to cooperate with them, which obviously drew the ire of Iran and other nations.
And the Bahrain thing was all about getting the Palestinians out of poverty.
Getting Palestinians $50 billion. That is
$50 billion.
Around the world.
Stop saying you're poor and live in poverty and just start, we want to invest in you. And you know what it means? It means that some of those billionaires will no longer steal the money, because America is going to supervise what goes where, unlike the Europeans.
Right.
And that's why the Palestinians rejected it.
Well, one thing I think, because this issue comes up a lot, what you mentioned about the deal of the century, is this the 7-year covenant? Well, first thing we have to remember is the church is going to be out of here before the Antichrist can rise to power. So this isn't the deal of the century, but as Amir said, it's kind of paving the way for the thought processes that will allow the acceptance of a deal from an outside source to be received by those countries in the Middle East. And, you know, Amir, I think one of the important things for us to recognize is that the Gaza Strip is 171 square miles. It's home to 1.85 million Palestinian people. They're actually, according to the other Middle Eastern countries, they're actually Syrian Arabs. That's what their nationality is. They're an Arab people. And interestingly, that there have been calls recently from the Ayatollah Khomeini that we are going to reject anything that the U.S. offers. Mahmoud Abbas has said the same thing to the delegation of Democrats that are there touring Israel even now. We won't accept anything that is offered by the United States. And the Ayatollah Khomeini has made his statements under the guise of having a passion for the Palestinian people and their plight and their oppression and seeking to free them from this occupation. But, you know, the curious thing, even as we just talked about, $50 billion being distributed to 171 square miles and 1.85 million people, that's a lot of money. And the Iranians and their great passion for the Palestinian people since 2008 have donated $20,000. The Iranians, this oil-rich country, has donated $20,000 to the Palestinian cause. However, they have donated millions and millions and millions to Hamas, which tells us where their heart actually is. And it's kind of interesting if we think back even to the U.S. involvement. And again, looking at this small population of people in a very isolated area, and they are, I believe, the number 40 densely most populated areas in the world. But the fact is, the United States, since 2008, has fed into the Palestinian society and economy $6.4 billion. That's just the United States. That doesn't include Britain and other countries that have sent not quite that large of amount. But the interesting thing, here you've got this little tiny piece of land that the next country or city in line below the Palestinians who have received international support has received less than half than that which has been given to the Palestinians, and the scale descends from there. So in other words, of all the countries around the world that need and receive international support, the Palestinians are getting more than twice as much as any other nation or area or city on the face of the earth. And yet, here they are, clearly living in destitution. And I think one of the things we also need to remember is that 75% of the Palestinian population is under 25. It is a young group of people who are hungry to be educated and to have the opportunity to obtain a job and make a career and have a family for themselves. And yet all this money continues to get funneled to the destruction of Israel, to building tunnels, attacking Israel, funding those who are making these incendiary bombs that are being flown out of the Gaza Strip into Israel, starting forest fires, destroying crops, and all these other things. So one, remember, the deal of the century is not the 7-year covenant made by the Antichrist, which means Donald Trump is not the Antichrist either, as some would like to say.
Amen. Look, it's interesting because I think the Palestinians themselves, if they're true to themselves, they understand that there was never a state called Palestine, never a nation called Palestine. And they came from different Arab countries, and in order to attack the Zionist idea of the return of the Jews back to their land, they underwrite the rights, the claims of them over the land. But it's interesting because you may not be aware of what's going on right now in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, but when they understand that the support is no longer there right now, and it's not there, under the pressure from the White House, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the president of Egypt, agreed to open the Rafah border crossing from Gaza into Egypt. There's no more siege. There's no more, Gaza is not blocked. They can go to Egypt as much as, in fact, it's the Palestinian Authority, may I say the Hamas in this case, that limit the Palestinians who wants to go out. And only 400 are allowed to leave. And now, if that's their land, why would they leave? But they're leaving. If they could, they would have left by the 1,000, 4,000 a day. 400 a day is 144,000 a year. You understand? And they leave because Egypt and Turkey accept the Palestinian laissez-passer. It's their own passport. And it's interesting because eventually through Egypt, they fly to Turkey and they're stuck there. And that brings me to what happened in the last couple of weeks in Turkey. The Turkish foreign minister, I don't know if you know that, but I talked about it often. The Turks are now extorting the EU by telling the EU, if you're not going to give us 6.8 billion euros and release all Turks from the duty of having visa if we want to live in the rest of Western Europe, unless you do that, we will open the gates of the flood of immigrants that we still keep within our own territory, and millions of more illegal immigrants will flow into Europe. And these are not African necessarily. These are from Syria, Iraq, and quite a few Palestinians. So we are watching an interesting thing right now. If Turkey will be accepted as a member of the EU, Turkey will be the biggest because it has the largest population in Western Europe. You have to understand, in the European Parliament, the bigger you are, the more representatives you have in the Parliament. The more representatives you have in the Parliament, the legislation will be always in your favor. That's what Germany enjoys today. And the Germans don't want to become the second largest. And definitely they don't want a Muslim country to be the largest country of the EU. And therefore, they say no to Turkey. Turkey says, well, if you say no, then we reject your offer and we are about to open the gates and the flood will go all the way into your country. So Europe is right now in the most desperate situation it has been since the time of the end of World War II. And that is why I always tell people, this is the exact situation that place needs to look up for a deliverer, such as someone who will be eventually the Antichrist.
Well, the temperature has definitely changed in Turkey over the last, really less than a decade. Mm-hmm. And Erdogan, even though he's been in power for some time, and I think he would like to have that permanent position of president, he's had a couple of dings in his administration lately. They lost the city of Istanbul, and they lost Ankara as well. And this next election is going to be rather curious as to see what happens. But what we do know is that they are being more radically Islamicized. And Turkey, like Iran, prior to the deposition of the Shah, was very westernized. And if you see video from pre-1979, things going on in Iran look like things you would see on the streets of Los Angeles. And the same was true in Turkey. But now, even having been in Turkey in 2012, our Turkish tour guide pointed out multiple times a woman wearing a full burqa, or even just simply the hijab, the head covering, and said, this is not something we used to see here in Turkey, but it's becoming more and more prominent. And therefore, Erdogan and others are pushing this caliphate idea where he hopes to restore the glory of the Ottoman Empire and really wants to be a sultan more than the president and see Islam rule and dominate over the world. And this is really kind of one of the tools that they're using. And I think it's a bit of a misnomer to call this immigration in countries like Germany and France. It's not really immigration, it's infiltration. And it's for the very reason that Amir just pointed out. When you've got a country that will have possibly within the EU the largest voting bloc, then the next thing you know, they're forming coalitions, they're putting prime ministers or presidents of the EU in power, and all the votes start to swing their way. And the next thing you know, we have to remember that Islam is not simply a religion. Islam also is a political ideology, and they have their own law system, and that is Sharia law. So you're just a step away from moving from Islamic influence to Sharia law governing European countries. And this is why I think,
amazing,
especially Germany and others must resist.
Did you know that Erdogan, because of the heavy fighting in northern Syria, Erdogan built military camps in northern Syria, but he opened the gate for at least 95,000 Syrians to enter into Turkey and receive Turkish citizenship. And why? Because in that area, there's tons of Kurds, and he wants to populate this area with Sunni Muslims that will be more loyal to him. But you can imagine if 95,000 northern Syrians will become Turks, and they are already Turks, and Turkey will receive visa waiver to go to anywhere in Europe, do you think they're going to stay in Turkey? They will flood all the way and head all the way toward Germany. Now, it's interesting. All over Western Europe, there are new political parties, right-wing parties, anti-immigration, anti-illegal immigration. Now, this immigration, they hate it, but they need it. Why? They hate it because it completely changes their country. They need it because without them, they wouldn't be elected. You understand? With the illegal immigration comes the problems. With the problem comes the despair. With the despair, everybody votes for them. So there is an interesting thing of love and hate, yet everybody can see Europe is changing rapidly. And at the moment, as you said, yes, there is a danger that it will become a Muslim, but still Islam is less than 10% in Europe. And I'm telling you, I have a feeling that when things will get really bad, those 90% that might become 80% soon will rise up and say enough is enough. And when the inclusive new world leader will emerge from that area, he will bring about a new religion that will suit both the godless Europeans and the defeated Muslims. You understand, Islam will come to almost a complete defeat at the end, at the result of Ezekiel 38 and 39 war. Iran and Turkey, both big nations that one is the mother of Shiite Islam and one used to be the caliphate of Sunni Islam. Both are going to suffer such a great defeat. According to Ezekiel's war, God, the God of Israel, is going to just consume them. That will be a defeat of a religion. It will be a defeat of a religious idea. And the millions of religious Muslims in Europe will have to seek for something else. And I'm telling you, also the godless, religious-less Europeans will look for some answers. And this is perfect platform for, I believe, Pastor Barry, that the Catholic Church is changing its, like a chameleon right now. It's changing its face and its colors and becoming more and more and more inclusive. And if the Pope can come and speak at the Congress in 45 minutes without mentioning Jesus once, you can see that Jesus is being taken out of the equation, and all ways leads to God. All religions can live together in harmony. It's not about religion anymore. There is only one God that we all can serve in different ways. By the way, it's the motto of the EU. We saw some of the artworks of the EU, how everybody can, they all look like the Tower of Babel. And Europe, many tongues or many languages, one tongue, they say, something like that. Listen, it's pretty scary how much they want to be like the Tower of Babel. They want to somehow challenge God and make a name to themselves. This is the only continent that instead of losing the war in Babylon, they actually imported Babylon into their own territory and will try once again another Roman Empire to conclude and complete that which they started in 70 AD. Quite interesting what's going on. You see, Turkey is violating the sovereignty of Greece and Cyprus right now.
That's right.
And Brussels, where the headquarters of the EU, is doing nothing. So even being a full member of the EU does not mean that you will be protected by the EU. Everybody understands that now. So this is why Greece and Cyprus befriended Israel right now. They realize this is a much better alliance where we can get things done. That, of course, angers more the Turks against Israel. So you listen, everything we talk about and we see is the isolation of Iran and Turkey and Russia from the rest of what's going on, and how Israel becoming a rising power in the Middle East, financially, economically, and how that will be the issue of the next war. You talked about that before.
Yeah, it's interesting some of the things that we're seeing develop that Jesus talked about even as he introduced what he would deal with in the Olivet Discourse. I think it's curious that as you were sharing about the strife that's being created and the increase that Jesus indicated would take place in the last days included kingdom rising against kingdom. And that Greek word there is basileia. It speaks of a governmental system or a person of power. And then he talked about nation against nation. That Greek word there is ethnos.
Ethnos.
And it speaks of individuals. And there'll be ethnic tensions and international tensions on the rise in the last days to a degree that it will cause the polarization and the hatred of one group of another, the bickering between one governmental system and another. And we are seeing this happen even now. And the curious thing about this is you pair that with the fact that there are two religions in the world that would not bow to a single system of religion in the world. And one is Christianity and the other is Islam. Islam is not going to bow to anybody. Islam has one goal, and that is world domination. Now, the church is not going to follow after a false Christ. The church is not going to follow after a Muslim leader or even some say it's the Assyrian of Micah. And the church is not going to follow after Muslim leadership into this world religious system.
And Israel will not accept him as
and Israel
Messiah
would not either.
also.
So what that means is in order for this person to rise to power who has as his associate in Revelation 13, the false prophet who establishes this global system, which is actually Satan worship, according to Revelation 13, two things need to happen. For that world religion to take place, the church has to be removed and Islam has to be destroyed. Now, I think the church could be removed perhaps today.
Yes. Amen. Hello. See, that's the advantage of having live audience. But we
That's right.
expect you to...
Yes, we do.
Yes.
That's the best news you're going to hear all day. We could be out of here before the end of the day. But also, amen.
All right.
See, what Amir pointed out is so vitally crucial that we understand what's developing now. And the polarization, even in Islam, you've got now the Saudis and the Arab Gulf states pitting themselves against the Shias in Iran and all these stresses that are rising up. And yet, here we have in that Ezekiel war scenario, you've got the Arab Gulf states led by Saudi Arabia protesting the economic invasion of Israel. And they're already beginning to cooperate with the Israelis, having kind of covert meetings and then not so covert mentions of things that they have negotiated or at least talked about. And here you've got, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got those nations that are going to war against and invade Israel, now working in partnership, moving toward that ultimate invasion that's going to take place. But there's an interesting feature about these nations, except for Russia, and that is these nations that are named, Iran, Turkey, Libya, and Sudan, all make up the majority of the base, if you will, for radical Islam. So if you destroy the base for radical Islam, you basically eliminated that military aspect and that aggressiveness of Islam during the tribulation period. I believe we've talked about this and not setting dates or anything, but I think there's evidence that that battle takes place early in the tribulation period just because God himself responds and destroys these invading armies. So if you have, prior to the tribulation, the removal of the church, that opens one door for the global religion. And then you have the destruction of radical Islam early during the tribulation. There's a second door, and the rest of the quote-unquote church, that there are going to be people who attended church in the tribulation, they're going to be welcoming to any type of system where somebody rises up and says, peace and safety. And we can solve all these world dilemmas. We can even establish a temple on the Temple Mount, and therefore the world can have peace. Amir, I thought it was interesting that Chaim Reichman, the head of the Temple Institute, he was quoted as saying in the Times of Israel just this past week, you want world peace? Build the third temple.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about what he said was he went on in the article to state that the Dome of the Rock shrine actually sits where the third temple, or first and second temple stood, and it is where the third temple ought to be. And he called for Jews worldwide to donate to kind of a GoFundMe type of approach to establish the architectural drawings for the third temple. But he didn't make any bones about the fact that where the Dome of the Rock shrine stands is where the third temple needs to be. So in essence, we might say kind of by default, he's calling for the destruction of the Dome of the Rock Mosque.
Hello? I agree with you. And you just mentioned that apart from Russia, they're all, of course, radical Muslims. So what about Russia? Uh, and this was a very bad week to Russia, to say the least. In fact, the bad luck, quote unquote, started on July 1st when there was a major explosion, actually a fire that was aboard a secret deep diving nuclear powered submarine, and that killed 14 people. This is 10 years after we had the death of 119 sailors in another nuclear submarine, which, by the way, they just came up with a movie on it. I know because I watched it on my flight. I had so many hours to kill, and from Singapore back to Zurich. But what I want you to know is that that was July 1st that 14 sailors in the nuclear submarine died. But then I want you to know that on August 5th, an ammo depot at a Russian military base in Siberia, said to have been actually to house around 40,000 artillery shells and other weapons, suddenly exploded. Now, if you go online and see the explosion, you would think it's a nuclear explosion. It is huge explosion that went on for minutes, because you're talking about rounds of ammunition, and they're all like, it's just unbelievable. And if that's not enough, that was August 5th. Then on August 8th, which was Thursday, a missile engine exploded at a Russian naval base not too far from Finland. It's actually on the coast of the White Sea in the city of Nyonoksa. And President Putin last year boasted that he's got new rockets that are have nuclear engine. Rockets with nuclear engine, not nuclear warhead, but nuclear engine. That's a game changer. Well, it just forgot to tell you that they haven't tested it successfully. And apparently one of those engines, it's a nuclear engine, exploded. And they're fearing that Chernobyl 2.0. Chernobyl is now repeating itself, and everybody is staying quiet right now. Now, the cities all around were all given immediately an order to drink iodine, 11 drops each of iodine. And that is, of course, to protect yourself from radiation. The elevated radiation in this whole area was clearly measured. And you're talking about finally, because they cannot anymore, these type of things cannot be hidden anymore. Finally, it was on the New York Times yesterday. Russia confirms radioactive materials were involved in deadly blast. So it was on the New York Times, a mystery explosion at a Russian weapons testing range involved radioactive materials. The authorities admitted on Saturday. Today is what?
Sunday.
Hello. And as the blast admitted, death toll rose and signs of creeping radiation emergency, or at least fear of one, grew harder to mask. We are talking about a very bad week and bad 2 months to the Russian military. They do not have any success in Syria. And the Russian economy is not doing well. Oil prices are now in the 50s, not even in the 60s. That's the main engine of the Russian economy, the price of gas and oil. And folks, and by the way, the trade war between China and America, guess who blinked first? China.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got an interesting president. Right? Very, very bold, very, very, very tough, and he knows how to play the game. From at least from a financial point of view, it was China that blinked first, and they tried to, of course, manipulate the currency, and so America threatened to add them to the list of countries who manipulate currencies, and that means nobody will do business with them. And so it's interesting how, without a single gunshot, not even one, so many countries eventually decide no longer to play games with the United States and with the rest of the world, not only with the United States. And so, yeah, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So what we're watching is Iranian shenanigans on the Persian Gulf, Russian growing unrest from within and outside, growing number of demonstrations against Putin right now all across Russia. You see that Europe is flooded with immigrants, and the British economy this month, the first month in many years that it has negative growth. It's one thing to have 0 or 0.1, but to have negative growth, this is beyond recession. And you can clearly see that it's a desperate continent. So on one hand, we see Israel is a rising power financially. We see that the moderate Sunni countries are now siding with Israel, which actually weakens the Palestinians in their agenda and brings about Jerusalem to be a city of Israel and bring about the possibility for a temple in the future to be on the Temple Mount. At the same time, you see Iran is angry. By the way, one of the things Iran is angry about is Israel agreed to participate in the peace enforcing task force in the Persian Gulf. Can you imagine they see Israeli ships with Israeli flag on the Persian Gulf patrolling? Now they're angry and they said it will never happen. And I'm thinking to myself, why is it that an Israeli flag in the Persian Gulf next to Iran is not okay for them, but an Iranian flag on the Syrian border right in front of us is okay with them? So I actually think it's ironic that if they patrol next to Israel on the Golan Heights, we patrol on the Persian Gulf. And they really don't like it. It's a big, big blast to their ego, you understand. It's beyond the financial, it's the ego that is bruised now.
It's called the nanny tactic.
And I think this is exactly why Israel said yes. Not that we're so excited about patrolling the Persian Gulf, but we said yes because just as you guys allow yourself to patrol next to our borders, we have absolutely no problem patrolling next to yours. And it's quite interesting. So Iran is being pushed with its back to the wall. Russia is being pushed with its back to the wall. Turkey, you see, nobody wants to deal with them. They don't want them to be members of the EU. All the immigrants flow first to Turkey. They don't know what to do. 3.8 million refugees are now in Turkey at this point, a country of 82 million people. So you're talking about that. And then you see chaos in Libya and Sudan. I mean, Ezekiel is more accurate than tomorrow's newspaper, basically.
Yeah. That's an important thing to point out because that's the other component of that Ezekiel invasion is the economic woes that are shared amongst all these countries. They're not just radical Islam. They're all in financial trouble. They all have huge populations of young people, and the young people are becoming more and more frustrated with the leadership. And these types of things where you have, like Putin, of course, he was, very accommodating to the protesters against him. He only arrested 1,400 of them in one day. So, freedom of speech over there all the way.
It's important to keep freedom of speech. Right. You're free to walk in your prison cell anywhere you want.
That's right.
Wow.
But, you look at this as a shared feature of what's happening amongst these nations. They're not just all radical Islam. They're not just all anti-Israel. They're also in major, major economic trouble. And there's an association with the petroleum and natural gas products that are now on the horizon for making their way into European markets from Israel. And this is cataclysmic for an already struggling, especially Russian economy. Iran has their own problems because of the sanctions and the U.S. imposing, penalties on countries that buy Iranian oil and countries refusing to do so. So you've got this shared feature also. And Amir, as you were talking earlier, it just reminded me, about the whole China-U.S. trade deal. During the tribulation period, when Babylon, which some say represents a city, others say a global system of commerce, and whatever it is, the protests that happens during that time from the merchants who are watching the city burn or the country burn or whatever it is from the sea, their dilemma that they proclaim in essence is, who's going to buy our stuff? And really that's, I think, where we have the leg up in this whole trade deal with China. We have long been a manufacturing nation under some previous administrations. We exported our jobs and began to import cheaper products. So we, in essence, have become a consumer nation to a degree. And thank the Lord that President Trump has been imposing penalties on nations that take jobs outside of our countries. And some of these companies are coming back to the country. But all of this plays into the fact that there are huge economic features of the last stage scenario that we're seeing, like everything else, begin to boil and someday are going to boil over and cause this, the nation and kingdom battle to rise to a level it's never seen before.
Do you agree with me? Of course you do. Joking. No, but do you agree with me that the finding of gas and oil by Israel is sort of like the hook that brought Russia all the way down?
I have no doubt because of the.
Thank you.
What the. Because of what Ezekiel tells us, Sheba and Dedan, which is Saudi Arabia and the Arab Gulf states, are going to say, what's the purpose of this invasion? Is it economic in nature? Have you come to take plunder and booty, which obviously in our day we would just translate as to economic motivations. And, like you mentioned earlier, Russia has a much higher ground to market cost than what the current market will allow for them to gain a profit off of each barrel. And I mean, they're losing upwards of $50 a barrel. And this is 60% of their gross domestic product is energy-related products coming out of Russia. So this is a major, major blow to their economy. And, with the negotiations for the Leviathan field, also gas field, natural gas, off the coast of Haifa, making its way into the Grecian market and then on into Europe. That's a big blow, again, to Russia. And
that Russia used to collaborate with the Saudi Arabia to manipulate the prices of oil and to slow down the production so the prices will spike. And it's interesting because President Trump picked up the phone and called the Saudi crown prince and said, I don't know if you know, but there's two things that happened in the last 2.5 years. The first thing is I won the elections. And that the second thing is you're no longer the number one oil producer in this world. America is.
Right.
And so the rules have changed. And whenever you are going to manipulate the prices, I'm going to continue to produce them so cheap that everybody is actually going to buy from me even more. So what happened is every time the Saudis and the Russians caused the prices to go up, the American market actually gained from it, and everybody went to buy from America. Every time, look, there's problems in Venezuela, people start buying from America. Problems in Iran, people buy from America. Russia and Saudi do manipulation, people buy from America. I mean, eventually, all of those shenanigans around the world, different parts of the world, actually brought America to number one. And therefore, Saudi Arabia can no longer play games, and they stopped playing games. And Putin, crime associate is right now no longer there available, and Putin cannot single-handedly raise up the prices because nobody cares if Russia produces oil or not anymore. So he's in a very, very big dilemma. Just like the Iranians need some provocative actions to get the attention and cause something, Russia would need that, Turkey needs that, and Sudan and Libya need that. They're in a great need for a war that will somehow make them relevant once again, and for their economies. Many people know that a war is the best thing that can happen to some country's economy. And so this is why, by the way, it's not going to be won by a military campaign of any country. Because what they do is very smart, if you really think about it. All of them simultaneously attacking Israel, mostly by rockets, by the way. The Bible talks about it comes like a cloud, dark cloud from the sky. And I can only imagine the Palestinians just announced that they managed to defeat the Iron Dome. They know how to do it. And we asked them, how? What do you mean? They said, well, all we do is just launch 20 to 40 rockets in 1 second rather than 2. So the Iron Dome will not have enough time to shoot down so many. And you can imagine, you can multiply it if it's coming from Iran or Russia or Turkey. So you can imagine how the sky will be dark from rockets, basically, flying towards Israel. And God, not Israel, not America, not Europe, not even Saudi Arabia, they can protest, but they will not help Israel. It will be a supernatural interference and intervention of God in order to show his hand. As the God of Israel that protects Israel, show himself to Israel, but also show himself to the rest of the countries all around the world. So I think that in the natural, their war was actually meant to be a good outcome for them. Their war was actually a bright thing to come up with in light of the weakness of all the countries all around. But it is God, not our military, that may not have an answer to it, or not America, and certainly not Europe. It is God that is going to put an end to it. And he makes it very clear that he is doing that. And everybody will know that he did it. And so that's one more reason why I believe that the radical Muslims, either they were destroyed or now their ideology is destroyed because the God of Israel once again defeated them. And so I believe they're going to shop for something new or something else. And even for the sake of being accepted in Europe, they want to adopt something else, that they're not going to be outcast, they're not going to be some element that is still strange to the Europeans. So let's all adopt a new world religion that all good, be good, do good, say good, hold hands and sing kumbaya. And it might work for a short time, but not for too long. Wow.
Yeah, I've always looked at that kind of through a bit of a comical lens, if you will. I mean, you think about what's going to happen. You've got radical Islam invading Israel. God destroys them with an earthquake and hailstones of fire and takes 7 months to bury the dead. I think the marketing of Islam is going to be tough during the tribulation. I don't think
exactly
people saying, hey, come follow after us. Well, they were just destroyed by the hand of God quite clearly. And so that, I think, is just going to be the ultimate destruction of Islam altogether.
I agree. Keep watching what's going on in Damascus, because I believe that the fall of Damascus might be the last straw for Russia, and it will lead into the Ezekiel war. Keep watching what's going on around in the Middle East. Israel continues to strike any Iranian target we have that is plotting against Israel, whether it's in Syria or in Iraq. there's only 2 strikes I can talk about, and I already did in the previous updates, but there are a couple more that we cannot talk about. So I can just tell you that things did happen, but you are not allowed to know. If I tell you, I have to kill you.
But now you do.
So, but Israel is not limited to Syria only, and we already made it clear to the Lebanese also that if they continue to receive weapons into their country from their seaport and airport, eventually they will leave no choice for us but to strike their most important infrastructure, which is the the air base, the airport, international airport, and the seaport of Beirut. So very interesting times. This is why we need to pray for Prime Minister Netanyahu to win the elections, because we have a bunch of clowns on the other side. I mean, they are maybe some decorated generals, but they know nothing about politics and know nothing about handling themselves in the international arena. I pray that in the coming elections next month, and I know it sounds so weird that we just had one last April, and the same year we have another election, but the problem is that in Israel there's a deadlock of 50-50 basically in the parliament between the right wing, which are the conservative, and the liberals and the Arabs combined. They combine about 50%. And that is a problem. Netanyahu must secure 61 seats without counting on any of the parties that is collaborating with either the left or the Arab party. So pray that he will win. And also, I'm praying. You pray for us, I'll pray for your 2020. I mean, if I think we have clowns, you guys, I have some medications to give to some of them. This is terrible. What you see here on the Democratic ticket, it's just terrible. They almost fight who is more insane than the other. It's almost like, let's prove to the world that we really lost it. I'm sorry that it might offend you as an American, but you're in bad shape if you're not voting for Trump again. And I'm not an American. I can say whatever I want. I'm not pushing for any party I'm not a member of the Republican Party. I think they have their own clowns. But look, you have to be realistic. This is by far one of the best presidents you ever had. By far. Now, it's not that I judge someone by how he say things, but I judge how he does things. And look at your economy. Look at how the world is viewing you now. Look at your country is in a much better shape right now. Now, anger and mass killing, I don't think Trump invented them. If you only counted how many mass shootings you had, the problem of America is not guns, is the people that operate the guns. And guns can never operate themselves. The problem, let's face it, it's like people are angry that Earth is not greener. And I want to remind them that Earth stopped being so green when sin entered the world. So if you want Earth green, you have to deal with the sin issue, not with the CO2 issue. CO2 is something that is required for life, and it was there always and will stay there. By the way, you can read all about it if you want. They manipulate the numbers to get money allocated to countries and companies that do nothing but rob the money from the people. There is no problem in the world right now with CO2 emission. The problem is that people think it's a problem. And then what happened is they changed their entire agenda. And again, the same goes with guns. the sin problem. Look, 99% of those shooters were fatherless. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Fatherless. There was no father in the house. I mean, it starts with broken families. It starts with broken marriages. It starts with terrible abuse and terrible life. This is the problem that we have, and that's what we need to deal with. Trust me, a terrorist will always get a hold of a gun anywhere he wants. You need to take care of the core issue, and it's the person behind the gun. And just so you know, if nobody would have had guns, then the terrorists would not have been killed in some of the cases before they killed 20 or 30 or 40 more people. So it's not about the guns, it's about those who operate the guns. And trust me, anyone who decides that he's about to kill someone, he'll get the gun, whether legally or illegally. I mean, since when murderers, I want to kill 50 people, but I'll only do it legally. I'll only buy the gun legally. I mean, are we joking? Chicago has the most strict gun rules in the country, and it has the highest homicide. I mean, let's face it, it's not about the gun control as much as taking care of the problem of the families and the fatherless children and all of that. That's the issue that America is facing. Good. Pastor Barry, you want to conclude somehow with something?
Nah.
No.
No, that makes such a great point. Simply because of what's happened in a short span of time, the radical changes that have taken place in our country and around the world. And I think that's such an important thing for us to remember, considering the fact that virtually every demographic study or research group or survey, when they were looking at the situation that was developing amongst our young people, was the absence of a father being present in the home. And the general makeup or construct of the American home having changed dramatically was a leading contributing factor to the imprisonment of young American males. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, that's irrelevant. Now all of a sudden in our day, two moms are as good as a dad and a mom. And the dynamic has changed. And all these facts that we have stood upon and based our decisions upon for the last 200 and some odd years or 42 or 3 years of our country, the foundations that we established our laws on based on the Bible are now out the window. And we're living in a time where the delusion is so strong that just easily observable and provable facts are denied when they've been recognized throughout the course of not just our history, but the history of the world. Now listen, yes. I know a lot of people have their own opinion on this, but get out your notepad. I want to run through the list of genders that are actually present today. Are you ready? Male, female, end of list. That's it. And I say that for this reason, because the number bounces around between 63 and 67 genders, and it's multiple guess or multiple choice, and you can change gender on any given day. Now, is that wisdom that comes from above that is first pure? Well, of course it isn't. Is that evidence of a strong delusion now taking over our world? It's evidence of a strong delusion that is going to reach its zenith when they believe the lie of the Antichrist, which is him declaring to the world that he is God. Now, I say that for the very reason that we're close. Our redemption is nigh. Jesus is coming soon. And we need to grab as many people as we can and share the gospel of Christ with them.
Amen. I think the message is clear, but it's not easy for quite a few people to agree with or digest. And I think that because, of course, the Christians will agree, but unfortunately, most of the people aren't. And social media is going to ban or censor such messages in the very near future. And this is exactly why, as much as I love social media and as much as I think that social media, if you use it right, can be a great tool to spread the word, I always urge people to go and either subscribe to our newsletter or go to our website, because eventually, unless you own a website and your own newsletter that you can communicate yourself directly to the people, you might disappear. Because I know my days with Facebook and YouTube and Instagram are numbered. There's no doubt about it. I can see it every day. And so I want to urge all of you back home and right here, subscribe to our newsletter and our devotional. We do devotional together. Every week we send it to you. So go to our website, beholdisrael.org, and you can subscribe. This will be maybe one day the only way we can communicate with you in the probably even near future. You can also get you have a newsletter also, am I right?
We have a blog.
A blog.
Yeah.
On your website.
BarryStagner.com.
BarryStagner.com. Okay, so you can also subscribe to the blog. And I just want to encourage you not only to rely on social media, as nice as it is, and it is nice, those days will come to an end sooner than you think. So,
you have to remember, I saw something the other day that was very important on Facebook, and it was a quote from Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet." So we have to use some wisdom out there.
Yeah.
Just because it's
Exactly.
on Facebook doesn't make it real.
Exactly. And so really the filtered thing that comes directly from us, and by the way, people hack to people's accounts also and send them messages that are not. So my point is, unless you go directly to us, either by our website or newsletter, one day we will disappear for all of you, unless you have that connection. So look, for us, it doesn't matter number-wise, because we want you to think about the day after. That's all. The day after is that we will not be allowed there. And while others will use it to brainwash you, you will not get the truth from wherever we are and whatever we do. So hurry up and sign up for our newsletter, our devotional, and we will come up also with tools like Bible study guides that we want to create to the messages that we have already, and many more things. But we can only do that directly with you once we're banned or censored on social media. If you want to join our 2020 Israel tours, we still have few tours that have few openings. Log on to our website and go to the tour section, and you can do that. We also want to encourage you to follow us on Instagram, Behold Israel, Facebook, Behold Israel, and the YouTube channel. Don't click and search for Amir Tsarfati, because so many people take my message, edit it, cook it, and put it as if it's me with just my face. Go to the source, which is our channel, Behold Israel, and subscribe over there. I want you to encourage you to subscribe to, you have a YouTube channel?
Our YouTube channel is The Truth About God.
The Truth About God. That truth or just truth?
The Truth.
That Truth About God. It's a YouTube channel. Subscribe to that channel, as well as to your blog. And do you have also
We've got Instagram.
Instagram?
And,
What are you on Instagram?
Facebook, just my name.
Barry Stagner. Facebook, Barry Stagner. He has a Facebook official public figure page. Good. Wonderful. You want to say the last thing before we finish?
You mean the famous statement?
The famous statement?
Hi, Ben.
Hi, babe. There you go. That's a famous statement. People ask him everywhere around the world where we travel, say hi to babe. Anyway, I just want to thank you for joining us. We've been more than an hour now live on Facebook. Why don't we conclude with a prayer? You're going to pray, and I will conclude with the Aaronic blessing in Hebrew, and you can do it in English as well.
All right. Father, again, we're thankful for the things that we have discussed today, in that we can look to your word and watch things develop and know that the time is at hand and the hour is short and the day is approaching. And we're grateful that you love us so much, God, that this time that you said is going to be unlike any other that the world has ever experienced will not catch us like a thief in the night, because we are not of the night nor of the darkness, but we are of the day and of the light. Thank you for sending Jesus to demonstrate a love that is incomparable to any other known or experienced by man, to die for the sins of another that we might live forever. We thank you for your Son. We thank you for your word. We thank you for your Spirit within us as a guarantee that we have a future inheritance that lasts forever. So, Lord, we thank you for all that we have experienced today and the reminder that we are to be about the Father's business as you were. For someday we will stand before that bema seat and give an account for what we did with what you gave us. Help us to run and fight until the end, Lord, and do all that we do for your name and glory. In Jesus' name.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance toward you and give you peace. Amen.
That peace, that shalom that surpasses all understanding. All right. Thank you. God bless you. And shalom from Calvary Chapel, Tustin, from Southern California. God bless you. Shalom. Bye-bye. Hug the soldiers. They bake bread and cakes and sweets for the soldiers. The first time ever since the birth of the state of Israel that we are watching that community not despising and not attacking and not condemning the military, but actually loving and appreciating the care that comes from the military. This is amazing. We're also seeing a lot of youth movements in Israel that are now volunteering in mobilizing food to elderly people, in mobilizing help to people. For example, the farmers in Israel are stuck with all the produce. So what we do, we take all of the produce to a place, outdoors place, and people get text messages or Facebook posts that are calling the people to come and buy fresh produce straight from the field. And so we help the farmers. I've never seen anything like that. I know, I'm 47 years old. I've never seen anything like that in any of the wars that Israel had and the military operations that we had to go through. We've never seen camaraderie in such a way, which is amazing. And by the way, I can see that in so many other places around the world. Another thing I want you to know, one of the chapters that really shocked me when I became a believer and I started reading the Bible was Isaiah chapter 1. In Isaiah chapter 1, I was shocked to find out that Isaiah the prophet heard from the Lord something regarding the festivals. Now we're 3 days before Passover, which is the most important holiday, the holiday that begins the Hebrew calendar. That's Passover. And it's interesting because a couple days before Passover, and I'm reminded, and you know that this Passover will be very different, very different. Families will celebrate it, 2-3 people, 3-4 people. Normally it's tables of 40-50 people each house. Normally this is the most family-oriented time, and we're going to see a Passover unlike any other Passover we've ever had. But I want to tell you that one of the things that shocked me is when I reached Isaiah chapter 1 in verse 13 and 14 and 15. The Lord tells Isaiah the following thing, that he says, bring no more futile sacrifices. And then he says, incense is an abomination to me. He says, the new moons, the Sabbaths, and the calling of assemblies. I cannot endure iniquity and the sacred meetings. He says, your new moons. He says, your new moons. And he says, your also appointed feasts, and Passover is one of them. My soul hates. And they are a trouble to me.
I am weary of bearing them. And when you spread out your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. And it says, even though you make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. So I remember reading that and I was shocked. I said, Lord, you prescribed those holidays. You are the one that told us to celebrate all of them. And now you're telling us that you cannot stand, that your soul hates all of them. And then the Lord brought me to this. He says, your holidays, your Sabbaths, it's not mine. And then I realized we've turned the holidays and the festivals of God into something man-made, into craziness, into the craziness of shopping and the craziness of cleaning and the craziness of spending and the craziness of the rich. And by the time you get to this table, you are so exhausted and you don't even know what you're doing around the table. It's true to Passover, and it's true to Christmas, and it's true to Easter, and it's true to so many holidays that we have all around us. We just on automatic pilot celebrate those things, and we do all of those crazy things. This is a Passover unlike any other Passover. The craziness of shopping is not there. People cannot do that. The craziness of gathering together and having to impress one another with your house and what you have is no longer there. You have no guest on this Passover. This Passover is going to be all about you and God. This is going to be an amazing Passover. And I'm amazed to see that, and I think that you can clearly see that God is moving all across the globe, which is the next thing that comes out of this. Look, guys, I've seen videos that I made sure that they are authentic in the poorest favelas, the slums of Rio de Janeiro, in the poorest slums of Mumbai, in the places on rooftops of Pakistan, on a rooftop in Pakistan, a church service. And I'm talking about nurses and doctors that are on their knees praying. I'm talking about worship services in the parking lot of a hospital or of a shopping mall. I'm talking about a move of God in Mexico and in Brazil and in the area of India and in Pakistan, in all across the globe. There is something that is happening now that could have not happened if it wasn't a pandemic. The understanding that people are helpless, their knowledge, their might, their money plays